there was a bishop that recently did a meeting, held a sermon with Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and their respected families. And this bishop asked Trump to show mercy to the LGBT community, people, and migrants. Now, to be clear here, I think we already know how Donald Trump feels about immigrants, the border, and all that nature. I think he's going to follow through with his promise to securing the border and locking it down. And let's be very clear here, the Democrats didn't do anybody any favors, especially with how sanctuary cities not only mishandled their centers and their policies, but also treating people as well. And that's a legacy Democrats are going to have to deal with because both Democrats and Republicans have been using migrants as pawns. And I want to be clear on this. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I don't want to see anybody have their lives upended. But when you have U.S. politicians, like they always do, play this game back and forth, people are going to get hurt. And people are always pawns in the games of the establishment. And the Democrats and Republicans don't give a damn. And also when it comes down to the LGBTQ community, let's be clear here. As we covered in the 2024 election, the Democrats lost their coalition. And there were plenty of people, even those who are LGBTQ, that voted for Donald Trump. But let's go ahead and play this video because this is in which you see this bishop asking for mercy from both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Do I think these politicians give a damn? No. But are they being turned into something that they're not? Listen, Trump and all these other politicians of antiquity are different people. He's already 2 days in, and people are afraid that he's going to drop the hammer on everything. He's already 2 days in the job. Not defending him, but let's be clear here. You're putting a spotlight on somebody who hasn't even implemented all of his policies just yet.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals,
the faces on their families are priceless. But also, here's another thing too that I've seen a lot of top echelon liberals been saying about migrants, because they don't care about migrant families. They don't. But they always bring up the fact of, well, who's going to clean our toilets and scrub the floors? You know, that's what you're viewing them as. What? Tell us how you really feel, liberals, because when you hear liberals talk like that, you know, they're kind of they're saying like, well, who's going to do the jobs that we don't want? Because see, that's another thing too. You see, these latte drinking liberals, they say they care about migrants, but they don't. And when we asked, myself and Daniel asked a lot of those protest organizers during the first term of Trump, especially when the term of sanctuary cities was just getting started. Hey, is there a policy to really help uplift people? Is there a policy that's going to be done to protect families? Is there going to be stuff that's going to be done? We were told to wait. There's a process. How dare you ask questions? Oh, you guys must be secret Trump supporters. No. Is there a plan to make sure that people, you know, not be treated like garbage? And unfortunately, seeing how Chicago and its track record and how our mayors, both Lightfoot and, of course, now Johnson, who's now more hated than Lightfoot, how they've handled the migrant crisis here in the city, says a lot about overall how liberals viewed migrants. But again, you're asking, you're trying to put something on people that haven't even done anything, okay? And Trump has made it very clear what his campaign promise was going to be. And the Democrats didn't help anybody out. because they also created the problem more so at the border.
They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world. Amen.
Oh God. Ah, I'm willing to bet if not Trump or JD Vance, somebody under them were like, okay, who brought that who brought that bishop in? Who brought that bishop in to do that sermon? Because that was probably a very uncomfortable moment for Trump and his entire family. And look, while I'm finding the memes to be quite hilarious, let's be clear here, okay? Would this same bishop do that same kind of sermon for Biden and the Democrats? Would that same bishop, call out Hillary Clinton and the Democrats? Would she? These are questions that need to be asked because the thing is, it's a little bit of a double standard here. Okay, a lot to be said about Trump. Of course, could be here all day talking about Trump, right? But that's not the purpose of it because Trump is a perfect scapegoat. He's a perfect cartoon villain for everybody to vilify. But what no one ever talks about are the politicians who served in the Senate and House, previous Democrat and Republican presidential administrations, yes, including Trump himself, on how they implemented this migration crisis, how they helped make it worse, how our government organizations and institutions help create instability. Everybody's Coca-Cola favorite classic, the CIA. You know, they kind of have a little bit of connection with a guy named El Chapo, but don't worry about that. Let's not worry about that. Let's not look into, the reason why there is a drug war going on. Let's not look at the reason why that there's instability and economic instability in Central South America. It's because, sanctions and coups, regime change, wars, and of course, with the rise of cartels, a rational person seeing cartels, dictators, tyrants, warlords, they're seeing all this and thinking, this isn't a good place to raise a family. Geez, this isn't a good place for me to make a living. I need to get the HELL out of here. And people make the arduous march to the United States where there's this promise of a new opportunity, which then in turn, you have politicians playing the game with people and their lives, and then using the crisis at the border as another piece. Now, whether or not Donald Trump is going to be successful in securing the border, that's the big question. He's made that big promise about whether, he's going to follow through on that. Chances are he is, as he's been signing executive orders, ensuring that that's going to be done. That was one of his number one issues. And now there's a big concern about what's going to happen to many of these migrant families, especially in sanctuary cities, which for the most part, prepare yourselves because I do see Trump following through on that. Of course, he has indicated it's going to be happening right away, but right away and a few weeks, give or take. But this is something that Trump and his campaign are going to follow through on. But asking for mercy, asking for compassion. This is another attempt in trying to make Trump into this horrible dictator. When in fact, we've been living under tyrants and dictators who have perfected the neoliberal mask of looking like the good guy or good girl. You got to be worried about that and how these politicians who have flown under the radar, who profited off of war, profited off the prison industrial complex, profited off of migration. That's all money to them. And yet they put on that mask and they say, oh, we care about the people. But they're not showing mercy. They'll say one thing and do something altogether. I'm not expecting much in regards to what that preacher was saying. Trump, of course, went on to give his 2 cents about her. He found it to be very insulting to him. And of course, Trump being on social media, he's going to weigh in on how he feels about all these issues. But in the long run, what she was asking for seems fair enough. But my counter is, would you say that to any other U.S. senator or U.S. House representative? Would you say that to Obama? Would you say that to Bill Clinton? Would you say that to Hillary Clinton? Would you say that to Biden or Kamala? Because if memory serves correct, when protesters were asking Biden, Kamala, and Democrats for mercy for the people of Palestine, what was their response in that liberal crowd of compassionate liberals? They're listening to the Clintons or the Obamas campaign for Biden and then eventually Kamala. What was the audience's response? It was, shut up, get out of here, go away, be quiet. And what did the politicians do? Well, they did nothing. They were like, oh, we need to hear their voices. We need to hear their voices. But wait, never forget what Kamala said. I'm speaking. I'm speaking. It's a double standard. And so if you are going to be criticizing Trump, and let's face it, Trump does deserve criticism. I want to see the same thing happen to Democrats, but I think we know how it would play out. I think we know how it would play out, even then, if people ask anything like this for Biden, because we saw it on the campaign trail, and then we saw it was Kamala. We want real change. Don't ask these leaders to do the right thing because they never will. It's up to us. It's always been up to us to do the right thing.